Since 1992, Connecticut ASLA has recognized 25 recipients with the Connecticut Olmsted Award, which is given annually to a person or organization in Connecticut that has employed the principle of stewardship of the land in its guiding force in action. This award honors the life and lasting legacy of Frederick Law Olmsted, a native son of Hartford, who pioneered the modern landscape architectural profession as an advocate for public spaces and for the conservation of natural resources. Born in 1822 to a prosperous merchant family, Olmsted would quickly establish a reputation as a restless child who sought his education in the hills, streams, forests, and meadows of the Hartford countryside, often at the expense of his hapless tutors. The adolescent years of Frederick's self-described decently restrained vagabond lifestyle included stints as a merchant in a New York dry goods store, an apprentice sailor aboard a ship in the China trade, a scientific farmer in Staten Island. These were unremarkable endeavors for him and often marked by failure and setbacks, but nonetheless he persevered and soon found acclaim through his travel writings of the gardens of England, as well as criticisms of slavery in the antebellum South. Fortunately for the field of landscape architecture, Olmsted's literary career became a victim of the Panic of 1857, when his publishing business went bankrupt. Facing yet another episode of financial ruin, Frederick persuaded his friends in New York that he was willing to take a job, any job, that would allow him to support his family. Without hesitation, they provided him with a glowing reference for what they thought would be his finest profession, transforming the 770 feted acres of swamp, pigsties, and slaughterhouses on the outskirts of the growing city into a future public park. In this endeavor, Olmsted found the culmination of his oddball mercantile, seafaring, farming, and journalistic skills. His intimate knowledge of the land and savvy political acumen found a fortuitous match in the technical skills of the British architect Calvert Vaux. The pair's greensward concept was the winning design for what we now know as New York Central Park. But surprisingly, Olmsted did not immediately settle down into this new profession. In 1861, he took leave of the park to settle in as the executive secretary of the U.S. Sanitary Commission, spending most of his time traveling to the front, delivering medical supplies to support the Union war effort. His colleagues recalled how he often worked with feverish intensity, staying up all night, sleeping in his clothes on the couch, subsisting on a diet of strong coffee and pickles. By September 1863, he was beyond exhausted and resigned to get far away from it all as a manager of a gold mine in the Mariposa Valley of California. But in true Olmstedian fashion, the only vein that he hit was more bad luck. The failure sent Frederick back east to New York, where his grateful partner Vaux welcomed him back to the practice. Together they would go on to design Brooklyn's Prospect Park, Riverside Park in Chicago, and the Niagara Reservation in Buffalo. Over the next 30 years, Olmsted enjoyed success as a landscape architect. In addition to his work on parks, he was frequently sought after to design grounds for institutions, libraries, and private residences. He is perhaps best known for his layout of the 1893 Chicago World's Columbian Exposition. Here in Connecticut, he left his mark in many places, including Beardsley Park and Seaside Park in Bridgeport, Walnut Hill Park in New Britain, and the Institute of the Living in Hartford. Yosemite National Park and Mariposa Grove also owe a debt of gratitude to Olmsted. During his time in California, he became smitten with the giant sequoias he saw there. He wrote a series of letters to Congress, urging them to safeguard the land from possible development. His efforts were eventually rewarded when President Lincoln signed legislation in 1864 to acquire the land for public use, resort and recreation, inalienable for all time. In 1895, Olmsted retired from active practice due to his failing health. In 1899, he was one of 11 founding members of the American Society of Landscape Architects. And upon his death in 1903, his ashes were returned here to Hartford, to the Old North Cemetery, to be laid to rest alongside his parents and his infant son. Public Act 05-179 recognizes Connecticut Olmsted Day. It is celebrated on April 26th of each year, and it commemorates his life and legacy here in the state and across the nation. In 2014, Olmsted was inducted into the Connecticut Hall of Fame in recognition of his influence on the profession of landscape architecture, as well as his efforts in land conservation. Connecticut ASLA is pleased to present its annual Connecticut Olmsted Award to United States Senator Chris Murphy for his tireless efforts in advancing legislation to protect Connecticut's natural resources and to improve public access to recreational landscapes. In March, the President signed into law the permanent reauthorization of the Land and Water Conservation Fund as part of the John D. Dingell Jr. Conservation, Management, and Recreation Act. Thanks to the efforts of Senator Murphy, this legislation also contained language to designate the Lower Farmington River and Salmon Brook as national wild and scenic rivers. This is a big win for Connecticut and a testament to the good old persistence of Yankee ingenuity, noted the senator in his remarks to the press. Murphy's persistence began in 2007 as a representative in Connecticut's 5th District, and he never gave up on seeing this through to completion. For the 10 towns along this newly designated wild and scenic river, there is now access to federal funding for invasive species removal, for sedimentation and erosion control measures, for funding the construction of trail systems, implementation of recreational landscapes, and other benefits that could amount to over $100,000 per year. In Connecticut, there are over 500 conservation and community recreation projects that have been implemented thanks to the Land Water Conservation Fund, and we hope to see many more of these thanks to the efforts of Senator Murphy. But we would be remiss if we didn't perhaps laud the senator for his most important Olmstedian quality, his annual walk across Connecticut. Since 2016, Murphy has trekked hundreds of miles on foot across the state in the heat of summer to meet with constituents both on the road and in town halls. You see Connecticut in a different way when you're walking it, he said in a Hartford Courant article. I think there's a risk in this job that you only see the feedback that comes to you instead of going out and being proactive. Due to an overseas commitment, Senator Murphy could not be present with us today, but he has graciously provided us with the following video message to convey his thanks. Please join me in welcoming Emily from Senator Murphy's staff, who is here to accept the award on his behalf.
Thank you. Again, my name is Emily. I work for Senator Murphy, who normally would love to be here, but is a little, he's in Iraq today. Wow. So dealing with Foreign Relations Committee duties. I think Oliver really said it very well. The Senator for the past year has been really focusing on reauthorizing the Land Water Conservation Fund, protecting Highlands conservation funding for the Northwest Corner, protecting Long Island Sound funding, and making sure our agencies like the EPA and the Department of Interior are funded. And I think he'll tell you from that walk across the state that there's certainly we can definitely improve our pedestrian-friendly roadways when he's walking along those sort of really slim highway shoulderways. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but I know the senator is focused on, leveraging his role in the Appropriations Committee down in Washington to make sure we get some great funding for transportation here in Connecticut. And I think I'll cut it off there because why hear from me when you can hear from a video where he can share some remarks.
All right, let's see. Oh, yep, there's a picture of him walking. That seems to be a sidewalk though.
That's good. Yeah.
Hello to all my friends at the Connecticut chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. Thank you so much for honoring me with this award. I'm really, really grateful. And I'm also thankful for our partnership, the work that we do together on preserving open spaces, on incentivizing policies that support transit-oriented development, as well as the time that we spend trying to combat climate change, both with smart architecture, smart landscape design, and smart policy has been a real important facet of my work here in the Senate. Thank you again for this award. And we have a lot to do. We have some good news, bringing more and more federal dollars to transportation and infrastructure in Connecticut, protecting assets that matter to us as a state, tripling the amount of funding that goes to protecting Long Island Sound, the recent federal protection of the nearly full extent of the Farmington River. But we have a lot more projects ahead of us, and the work that you do to educate all of us who see ourselves as environmental stewards here in Washington is vital. So thank you for this award, and I really look forward to a partnership between you, your association, and the Connecticut delegation for a long time to come.